All right, we are live, I believe. How's everyone doing there in the chat? Let me know. Turk, what's up, brother? Hope everyone's doing good. I emailed everyone who sent in a track successfully. There were a couple who sent links that didn't work or downloads weren't enabled, but really not many, just a couple. And we're still doing the kind of 20 tracks guaranteed to be in, and then I've got like a wait list. So I figure based on the feedback from the people who submit and the questions I've asked, that seems to be the way that people want to do it. So we'll kind of do it that way for the foreseeable future. So we'll see how fast we can get through these tracks. Maybe I'm going to need to get one of those, like, well, I don't know, just a timer or something, so that I don't spend like 10 minutes on one track and then run out of time. Anyway, I just, it's important. I just want you to know it's important for me to do this kind of fair and everyone gets their go. Anyway, hope everyone's having a good weekend. Mine's been pretty chill. No gigs this weekend, which is sometimes good, but let's be honest, I'd rather be playing a gig. But I've been working on a new sample pack, so that's going to be coming pretty soon. So yeah. Anyway, let's get going. So first one we've got here, Ion John. Sick house producer from Portland, Oregon. We do a bit of work together, and this is actually a track that I've given him some feedback on, and I kind of suggested a few things he could improve, so let's see how he's done. As always, let me know about the audio and stuff in the chat quickly as possible if there's any issues, if my mic's too quiet, too loud, or if the track audio is not coming through. I think you've replaced the open hi-hat, right? That was one thing that I suggested, and it's sounding a lot nicer, a lot cleaner. Like the hat fits really well. Just like as a general kind of tip for everyone, and it's something that I noticed the last couple of days working on this sample pack. So I've been making like top loops and stuff, and something that I knew it, but it just was so apparent when I was doing it over and over again. Like the length of your sample and the way that you control that with like the envelope of like a drum. So I use Simpler or Drum Rack when I'm playing drums into Ableton, and setting like the release time and the sample length, it is so important for the groove. So you can have like a simple, just like kind of hat clap, maybe a couple of hats kind of groove that sounds really awkward and really like kind of robotic, and just by adjusting the length of the samples it can become like super groovy and sound like just, yeah, it is so important. So just keep that in mind when you're kind of programming drums. I think the other thing I said was that there was like quite a bit of percussion in here that felt like it wasn't really working with the rest of the elements, and they weren't kind of, it wasn't like following the bass line, or the groove was just off with some of the stuff. And it seems like you've taken out quite a bit of stuff, and it's sounding less cluttered and like much more kind of cohesive to me. Yeah, dude, it's sounding, yeah, I think you've really sorted it out. It's got more of the same feeling as the reference track that you sent, where everything's kind of working together and more in the same kind of direction. Alrighty, moving on. Go check out his stuff. His stuff's really good. Virgimatic in the club.
Club, go crazy in the club, lose time in the club, lose your mind.
Okay, this intro is already like just way too long. I don't know, why are you making a minute and a half intro if there's not something like super interesting happening? You know, like this first minute, you know, like especially this first, like, whatever that is, 15 seconds or something. It's not, it's a cool sound, but it's not changing or anything. And you've just added a snare.
Club, get high in the club. People in the club, get high in the club. People in the club, go crazy in the club. Stays in the club.
I think just all of this could be condensed down into about 30 seconds.
Crazy in the club. Mind in the club.
And then that as a drop, because I would assume that if you're creating an intro like this, you want that to be kind of played and then this to drop, like in the club, right? And I think this just, it's important to create contrast in your tracks, but this is just too much, I think.
Mind in the club, lose your mind in the club. In the club, get high in the club. People in the club, go crazy in the club. Lose time in the club.
So I think also there's a thing here where that I was just talking about the last track, which he'd fixed. It's like the vocal and the bass line, they kind of have different timings. Like the groove is feeling quite awkward between them.
High in the club. People in the club.
I think it's often not the way that people work, but I would really suggest to everyone to try finding, like, if you're going to use a vocal like this, try finding that first and then create your drums and your bass to work with that vocal, and you just end up with like results that are usually much better.
Club. Get up, get down, get down, get up, get down, get down, get down. Club, goes on in the club. Get up.
Okay, so there's like, again, same as the intro, there's like a lot of stuff. This could be really condensed. I think it feels like this track could be 5 minutes. And there's not much happening. There's not much progression with the elements and stuff. So you brought in this bongo rhythm again. It's not really working with the rest of the elements. I recommend checking out some reference tracks, and like referencing is one of the most important things you can do as a producer, and learn to do it. And you know, like I do it constantly. all your favorite producers use reference tracks. And that doesn't mean copying. That means like referencing, like trying to understand what other people are doing, get inspiration, get ideas. Just use reference tracks. So I mean, yeah, the arrangement just really doesn't work. Look at some references and see how other people are doing it. I mean, if you really want to use that vocal, I would suggest going back, probably just start again on a new track with the vocal and build everything around the vocal. Look at an arrangement that works from a reference track and try to kind of mirror that arrangement somewhat in your arrangement. That doesn't mean copying the elements that you use. That means like copying where the breaks are, and how the energy kind of flows throughout the track. Solid groove here, like, and I think this is a good example of something that's like solid and really simple. The vocals a little bit too loud and a little bit too dry, maybe. Just feels a little bit separated from the rest of the track. So here's a way to do that kind of like dynamics and that big kind of contrasting shift well. But he's kind of built up all this energy and then he kind of shifts it here by taking out the hats. But he's added in this synth, it's a simple synth stab, but it kind of takes instead of it just like dropping away and there being kind of nothing going on, it takes your energy and gives you something to focus on. But because there's this contrast, it creates dynamics in the track.
You give me reasons why I love you, reasons why I'll always love you. You give me reasons why I love you.
Yeah, all right. This is really cool, man. I mean, maybe it's just personal taste, but I prefer your kind of deeper stuff than the more Afro melodic kind of stuff. I think this is really cool, and it's quite unique sounding as well. There's some cool, interesting synths that you've got in here. This like one with the LFO movement. So the vocal, I know where it's from. The pack's been used to death. It's really good, which is why it's been used to death. So it's kind of one of these things where it fits the vocal, fits the track, works really well. Like I said, it's a little bit too high, and I think you could process it with maybe a little bit more reverb, high in volume, and add a bit more reverb and maybe delay, just to fit it in the track a little bit better. Because of how loud it is and how dry it is, it kind of feels, especially wearing headphones, it feels a little bit abrasive, like, because it's kind of whispered, but then it's loud, it feels a bit kind of creepy. But yeah, the bigger problem is that I've heard the vocal a bunch of different times in a bunch of different tracks that have been released by pretty big artists. I think like Miha Popovicio's used maybe not the same vocal, but vocals from the same sample pack in some of his like biggest tunes, and I think I've even used some of them. I don't know, they've been used a lot. So I would suggest, you could even contact that vocalist and see if he wants to do a feature or something. You could try and sign the track, and then like if you can get it on a good label, that gives you some leverage to get the vocalist to do something, or get another vocalist, because it's not a complicated vocal. It works really well, but I think it's always desirable to have something that's either unique or a bit more obscure from like a splice or loop cloud dig, a way, or you can kind of use them in a more creative way than just putting in a phrase. But other than that, really solid track. I'd just sort the vocal out and send it out as a demo. Okay, straight off the bat, I think that those chord stabs have a bit much reverb, especially for the intro of the track. It's kind of like drowning the track, and there's not much in it yet. So I would, if you want to use that kind of amount of reverb, probably doing it in the break or something could be a good place to do it. Yeah, it sounds like you've used like Valhalla Shimmer or something like that, something that's got like a really long feedback, because unless it's two separate things and you've got something in the background, but it kind of, it feels like a bit much.
You know what? the pages in your diary. Your secrets. Your secrets are safe with me. I will keep your secrets. Just think of me as the pages in your diary. Your
Right, so I think this could be a really cool track. So what I said about the reverb and stuff, it's like, yeah, so there's the string in there. Yeah, but there's just this kind of like atmosphere that's like makes it quite heavy, where I feel like the track should be quite light for the vocal and stuff. Really cool vocal. Not sure where it's from, but it slaps. Now, I'm going to give you some advice that sounds probably pretty harsh, but I think you're in a really good place with the track. The advice is your drums suck. I'm just going to say it how it is. So I think I know the kind of music that you want to make, and what I would suggest doing here is kind of just stripping it back, like literally just turning off a bunch of the channels. So you've got like the vocal, you've got the synths and stuff, pull back whatever's creating that kind of, that really heavy reverb and stuff. The arrangement works well. And then kind of like, I think you want like a much more light kind of groovy drum beat, like something like some kind of music style drum beat I think would work really cool here. And then your bass line, so some of the drums are cool, like these fills and stuff you've got are cool, but I think the main kind of basic drums that are going throughout need to be reworked. And then your bass line here, I think from what I can hear, it sounds like what it's doing is fine, but the sound is not very interesting. And you've got, like you can see here in the spectrum, and the bass is right down here by the kick. You've got the space here in the low mids where there's like room for some kind of tonality. So I think you can have like a bass that's got at least a higher octave, and it's going to fill up some of that space and give the track a bit more vibe. Yeah, but like I said, it sounds on the surface like pretty harsh criticism, but I think the track can be really cool. You just need to fix up a few of those things, and that's something like I do with tracks all the time. Like I'll make them and then it doesn't quite work for whatever reason, and then I'll listen to it a year later and go like, oh yeah, the drums suck, I'll remake the drums. Or like, oh, I've got too many different synths in there and they're all like working against each other, so what's the main thing, take out all the rest. It works, often that's how things work for me anyway. Let's move on. All right, I mean, this is really solid, man. But your kick and bass are, yeah, I think your bass is just like way too low, an octave too low maybe. I just want to check your kick a little bit. It's a weird kick. It doesn't really have like a, unless it's being filtered here, doesn't really have a, oops, what's going on here? Oh, maybe it's filtered. Let me see if I can find a place where it's not. Okay, so your bass is like, yeah, I think it's like maybe an octave too low. It just sounds like woo, 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 woo. And it's got no definition. And then it's leaving this kind of gap in the frequency spectrum where it's like really disconnected from the piano. It's not interacting with the piano. So it's kind of like giving this effect where in a club it would like sound like there's way too much bass, but when you're listening to it and these are good full frequency headphones, but I can't hear the definition of the bass. It's just like woo, woo, woo. So if you bring it up an octave, then you'll be able to hear it and make sure it's interacting with the piano. I would say just try bringing it up an octave, and then go from there. Maybe you need to change out the sound, but at the moment it's just, yeah, it's not working. Like you can a good test for that is like what I did with the EQ. So I think that's your kick here. Okay, so the bass is here, but it's also got a sub. So maybe your kick also, yeah, maybe replace both the kick and the bass. And then it should be pretty cool. Yeah, I think that's going to solve like a lot of your issues here. The track and the arrangement's cool. Maybe you could look at a little bit longer outro, you know, if it's a DJ mix. Just, you know, instead of dropping to this filtered kick here, you could take away the piano and just play the kick and the bass for a bit, and then just bring it out a little bit more gradually. Otherwise, cool. All right, Mr. Unknown Vibes. Wrong track playing. Sorry about that. All right, so I just got some feedback about this kind of first bit here. So from here to here, you've brought in like 3 or 4 new elements. And in this section here, you kind of just bring in a hi-hat after this drop, I believe. And then bring up this pad lead kind of sound, which is cool, but you've got like quite a few elements happening here. Something could be introduced or teased in this section, as there's kind of, it almost feels like it doesn't have a lead or a hook in this section. So maybe you could drop it in with this open hat here, right? And then in this section, maybe like, I don't know, tease the vocal or add one of these like synth pluck things, and then just kind of keep it building up a little bit more consistently rather than all at once in this section. Really nice build up there. Good work with the like kind of creating some tension at the end. It really gives a good payoff here. So see, there's in this bit you've got this like vocal delay from the Your Love bit. So whatever's creating that, you could like just, I guess it's like just a delay on the vocal. So you could just solo the vocal, bounce it out, and then take that little bit, just that delay tap as something to use in like one of these sections or something like that, to kind of introduce the vocal before it's come as just like a texture. All right, yeah, I mean, solid stuff. Unknown Vibes is a sick producer. Go check out his stuff. He's got a new EP out on ууuuGEAR, which I believe is doing really well in the charts on Beatport. So, yeah, he knows what he's doing. But yeah, like I said, a few little things that you could improve there. It's a pretty chilled track, which is fine. But I think there's some moments of energy, and it kind of, at the moment, it kind of feels like it's very linear, and then it goes up and then back down to nothing, So I think you want to kind of create a little bit more gradual rise to those crescendo points, and then kind of, just have the energy flow a little bit better through the track. But otherwise, really good stuff. All right. I believe this was one of the loudest tracks I've ever had submitted. Where are we? Look at that sausage. All right. Anyway, let's see how it sounds.
Don't give me this. Don't give me that. That's what you get.
I mean, for the amount of limiting, you've done a really good job of not having this audibly distorted, but I think it could really, really benefit from having some more dynamics. Like, it just, yeah. I feel like if you can get it to, I can't remember what this was, like -4 LUFS or something like that. If you can get it to -4 LUFS, either you're like Luca Pretolesi or your mixdown's probably not on point. So I don't know. It's hard to, it makes it hard to kind of give feedback on the mix, definitely.
It's gonna get personal. Yeah, better get paid.
Yeah, I mean, it's a solid track. I mean, it sounds like something like, I don't know, James Hype or someone like that would play, one of these kind of festival tech house DJs. It's definitely well made. It's, like I said, it's kind of hard for me to give too much feedback by how much compression is on there, because I don't know what it's going to sound like without that compression. And I just feel like if you're, you know, like your things are going, if you have like significantly less limiting on it, then you probably hear more definition between the kick and bass, and yeah, hard to say. But in general, I think the track sounds like a winner. Not my thing, but very well made, and I'm sure that it would work for a DJ like James Hype or someone like that. So it's got a lot of like, there's some good energy in the highs, but it's like definitely the hats are too low for what's going on. Like it's got like rides and like a 909 open hat or something, but they're just turned down really low, so it kind of feels like it doesn't have energy. So you can see when I turn that up, it already sounds more balanced with because there's a lot going on in the lows. It almost sounds like it's got like a high cut on it. You can kind of see from the spectrum here. There's not a lot going on in the kind of, so this area here between 1K and kind of 7K, or more like 800 hertz and 7K, is like a really important part. That's where a lot of the kind of personality and vibe of the track lives. Yeah, I think like all your elements and stuff, all your kind of melodic elements seem to be focusing in this low mid area as well. So I think you want to distribute elements more evenly throughout the frequency spectrum, because you've got lots of space to play with in the track, but then there's just new things coming in the same place all the time. So it kind of like, it makes it less interesting to listen to. And I get it, like things in that like low mid kind of range sound really cool, but it's really important to start to work with elements that exist a bit higher in the frequency spectrum as well, because you need to distribute things out across the track. When you have things that are filling up different parts of the track, then it starts to sound more full, more engaging, but you can do that with less elements. Yeah, I mean, it kind of like sounds like you've focused on the kind of elements that are like the wow elements, but then you're trying to add a lot of them into the track, but you need other things to balance them out. Well, where it's coming in that track, that vocal sounds like a bit loud. It might not be too loud when it comes in later, but at that point, I think you could bring it in a little quieter, maybe have it build up, because it comes in a place where there's really not much going on. So it seems really over the top.
Dancing around in my tight dress. Dancing around in my tight dress. Dancing around in my tight dress. Dancing around in my tight tight dress. Kinda like it when I get a little ballsy. Ballsy. Little ballsy, little ballsy.
So with the synths and stuff, I think you need, it's like by this point it's getting a little bit boring. Like I think it's like a cool foundation, but you want some different kind of elements to do, like a question and call and answer, question and response kind of thing, with the chord stabs that you're using. Look at some stuff, reference some stuff by like Josh Baker does a great job of that kind of stuff. Anything on Piv, like Danny Snowden. Yeah, though, like just kind of have a look at how people are doing. They can just having some little kind of riffs that sit in that are kind of different, more short, textural synth sounds that are kind of play off those chord stabs and then interplay with the vocals and stuff. You'd also look at using the vocals a little bit more creatively, like creating some chops or some kind of stutters or glitches or something like that to use with the beat.
Dancing around in my tight dress. Kinda like it when I get a little ballsy. Kinda like it when I get a little ballsy. Little ballsy, little ballsy. Dancing around, little ballsy. Dancing around, lateral effect. All them boys say I'm a little salty, but they kinda like it when I get a little ballsy. Gotta level up, gotta get naughty. There are lots of leave from my legs that palsy. Dancing around in my tight dress.
So there's really not a lot of like tension being created in this break. Again, try and look at some reference tracks, but it's kind of like it's not going down that far in terms of like the number of elements you're removing, and then it's also not coming up that far in terms of like the anticipation for the drop that you're creating. It just kind of happens. And by now, these kind of chords and piano have been happening for pretty much the whole track, you know.
Ballsy, little ballsy, dancing around in my tight dress. Kinda like it when I get a little ballsy. Dancing around in my tight dress. I'm feeling myself, put them all looking down.
And then there's not really much evolution, you know. It's all pretty similar. It looks like you've just kind of taken this section and reproduced it a bunch of times in a row. So yeah, I think there's like a cool track there. Now it's time to add the finishing touches and kind of add in the piano comes in the middle break. Yeah, okay. It's kind of like it's working as a like call and response to the chords, but they're very similar type of elements. So they kind of I would say they're working together, and it's not fulfilling the role of the thing that I was suggesting earlier. But yeah, I think you've got a solid base, like foundation of the track. Now it's time to kind of go and sprinkle in the magic touches that can really help to elevate it and make it stand out. With the vocal, it's I'm trying to think of a balanced way to say it. It's definitely not going to be for everyone. It sounds like this is just my opinion. It's not anyone else's opinion. It's not to my taste. It sounds like a kind of poppy splice loop to me. So just be aware that a vocal like that, some people are probably going to absolutely love it and it's just going to be right up their alley, and other people are probably going to hate it. It's just what it is. Using a kind of, I would say it's objectively a bit cheesy, and that could be a good thing in terms of like being catchy. But for some people it could turn them off the track. So I think it's just always good to consider that type of thing. But you've used it and it looks like you're kind of, you're making the track around it, so that's a good thing. If you're going to do it, you want to do it.
So you wanna be hardcore with your hat to the back, talking about the gaps in your raps, but I can't feel that hardcore appeal that you're screaming. Maybe I'm dreaming. So you wanna be hardcore with your hat to the back, talking about the gaps in your raps, but I can't feel that hardcore appeal that you're screaming. Maybe I'm dreaming. This ain't Christopher Williams, still some MC got to feel one. Cats, I got to feel some to let niggas know that if you fuck with big and heavy, I get up in that ass like a fuck with big and heavy. I get up in that ass like a fuck with big and heavy. I get up in that ass like a fuck with big and heavy. I get up in that ass like a fuck with big and heavy. I get up in that ass like. So you wanna be hardcore with your hat to the back, talking about the gaps in your raps, but I can't feel that hardcore appeal.
I think every time someone uses a Biggie vocal on here, I have the same response, which I'm a massive Biggie fan, and yeah, it's always going to be hard to please me using it. But I'm bored of the vocal already, and you've only just like got past the intro of the track. You're just using it. You're repeating it already by here. If you're going to use it, like do it in a kind of interesting way, tease it, and so that like by the time people kind of work out what it is and they're like, oh man, I love that track, or I know that vocal, or whatever, by the time you actually kind of play it and reveal it, it gives like a payoff, right? If I'm mixing this track in, like you're going to be playing this verse at the point where I'm just kind of like introducing the track. So yeah, I think it's just a big problem with the arrangement for starters, and then also using like a very well-known sample in its kind of like entirety, like using the whole verse. Obviously there's like copyright issues and stuff, but it's just like, it's not that creative in my opinion. It's not a creative way to use the vocal. And then this bit that you've looped in the break here,
I get up in that ass like a fuck with big and heavy. I get up in that ass like a fuck with big and heavy.
it feels a bit lazy. It's not really working to, yeah, it feels like just kind of almost random. And there's not like any production happening in it. You've just kind of looped the vocal. I hope that sound is not too harsh, Joe. But I know what you're capable of, and I think this is not at your usual standard in terms of like the production and stuff. Well, that said, the track underneath is really solid and is at your usual standard. You know, that stuff is cool. But the way that you've used the vocal and stuff there is not. So I think, you know, it's a good place to be in. You've got a really solid track, it sounds like, underneath, but the vocal is not implemented well.
They say a biggie off the street, it's a miracle. Left the drugs alone, took the thugs along with me. Just for niggas acting shifty. Sticks and stones break bones, but they gotta kill you quicker. Especially when I'm drunk off the liquor. Smoking fuck by the rock. To really get your niggas like chocolate.
You've got everything in here you need for a track, man. Just find like a cool phrase that's not like one of the more utilized ones, and then just kind of tease it and use it as like a kind of one shot that happens before the breaks or something, you know. Like there's definitely a way more kind of creative and restrained way to use this that will probably have a bigger effect. I've kind of said everything. The track itself works really well and sounds really cool. It's actually, I mean, it kind of sounds like one of the cooler tracks that I've heard from you. It's just the vocal killing it for me. Really cool stuff, Fernando. I think, yeah, the last few tracks that you've sent in have been really good. Feels like you've kind of reached a new level, which is always awesome to see. Mystery Box says, gets a little boring, and I had that same feeling too a bit. Once you get to like this bit here where you've got the kind of chords and this vocal coming in, maybe it's about here. There's like, now you've got like there's a bit more something. In this section here, or kind of like here, there's not really much happening. It's a really solid groove. Everything's working well. It's very kind of restrained music, which is totally fine. But I think just a few, maybe like one little element that does a call and response kind of thing, nothing chaotic, just like some like, yeah, just something to keep the listener interested, basically. It feels like it's taking a little bit too long to get to the point. I like the way you've used the vocal though. Maybe it's a matter of introducing it sooner and then, you know, kind of then adding one more element into the mix. I really like this element that you brought in the break. These little kind of, I don't know, it sounds like an FM kind of pluck or something, like do 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 do. Maybe it's like an organ or something. But yeah, really cool. And then you also add in some like this kind of cool string with a bit of vibrato on the sound. Yeah, you've got some cool elements in there. I think it's just, there needs to be, if you think of each of these sections needing their own kind of like hook, something that the listener can connect to, and then at the next point you want to kind of add something else, just add like another layer, and then also within that keep it, you know, there's some little bits of ear candy to keep it interesting and keep it fresh. J Allegro featuring Dan Diamond. That's, congrats if that's like an official collaboration. If you've just grabbed this from because Dan Diamond's a pretty legendary vocalist in the house and techno scene, dating back to the early 2000s, but he's done more recent stuff. So if that's like an official collaboration, then cool. If it's not, then I would definitely take his name off there. But yeah, let's have a listen. Nice one, Jay. That's cool.
To the rhythm and closer to my soul. The pulse of the dance music resonates with me and with you. It draws us near to music and the things that truly matter and the existence of it all. Us with the essence of music and these fundamental elements, you know. Closer, closer to the baby. Closer, closer to me, to me. Closer, closer to the baby. Closer, closer to.
That's an 8.5-minute track, so I'm not going to play the whole thing. Really well made, really well produced. All the sound design and stuff sounds really good. I think that, yeah, the reason that I didn't play it is also kind of maybe its biggest issue. I just think for 2024, for this style of music, you probably want to be aiming closer to 5 minutes than 8 minutes. That said, like, it's obviously you've got the vocal which you want to work with and you want to present it as well as it can be done, but I think you can do that. Yeah, I just think it needs to be edited down a bit, to be honest.
Closer to you. Would see in my mind.
Yeah, like there's kind of like a bit of like some of the parts are just a little bit too extended. I think you need to reimagine the arrangement a little bit. It feels kind of too drawn out, and while you've got lots of things in there that are like creating impact, in general as a composition I felt like it got a little bit boring, which yeah, and I don't know, it's hard to say. On a dance floor maybe it would work in the right club, but like, you know, for a festival crowd, I think, you know, a lot of DJs aren't playing, they're playing like parts of like a 5-minute track, you know, rather than the full 5-minute track, and then to play a 8-9 minute track. Maybe you referenced some of the stuff that what's it called, the Peace Division, the one he did with Peace Division. Can't remember. I love Peace Division, one of my favorites from back in the day. But yeah, their tracks were always pretty long. So yeah, I think just switch up the arrangement and you'll be onto a winner. Alrighty. This, I love this kind of like, it's almost, what do you call it? It's got this kind of like early Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre, like G-Funk, I think they called it, like with these synths and stuff. Really cool. But that kick is just totally wrong for the track. It sounds like something from like I don't know, 2010 like main stage EDM kind of track or something. It's just got so much attack. It's got like, you can kind of see it in the frequency spectrum. Like it's got like all this energy here, which is kind of makes kicks feel a bit muddy. It's got so much attack. It's got probably too much energy here as well. Like now it's starting to sound okay, but I'm obviously doing that to take away all the other, and it's taking away all the other elements. So yeah, I think replacing the kick is an absolute must for this one. But really cool sounds that you've got, and I like the way that you've implemented the vocal as well. I think the vocal is like hidden a bit as well. It's quite difficult to judge the rest of the track with that kick, because it's so present and in your face, and it's just kind of overpowering everything. So I would be interested to hear this with a much more tame kind of houseier kick, which I think is what is probably required. Because everything, the synths and stuff are all quite gentle and delicate, and so is the vocal. I think the vocal could be a bit more present, a bit more in front. Yeah, I don't know, man. Let's have another listen with a different kick, and then I think it could be really cool. It's just a bit tough to hear what else needs to be done over that kick. But I really like the vibe of it. I agree, Mystery Box. The synths were really sick on that one. I think your drum or your hats and stuff are a bit low in this, eh? Like you've got a lot of that low end and low mid in there, and it feels tilted, like there's too much in the low end and not enough in the high end, so you kind of need to balance it out a little bit more. So you can see what I'm doing with this EQ to try and kind of rebalance the things a bit. Obviously it's really difficult to do that with such extreme EQing. You're much better to do it with the volume of different elements. But you can kind of see how I think it needs to be rebalanced, roughly. Yeah, but I think this is one of the tracks that you've sent me before. It sounds really good. I really like the track. It's just the mix down. If you want it mixed, then let me know. That's something we can do.
We just have to let go.
Yeah, I think the vocal needs to be a little bit louder. I turn my EQ back on. So that there is to kind of pull up some of the synths and vocals.
We just have to let go.
Yeah, I think the track's really well written and produced. The arrangement works well. Just the mix is kind of not really there. So, I mean, like I always say, that's a great place to be, because it's just, the mix is just kind of technical stuff. Like even your elements, it doesn't sound like you've got too many, like some of the tracks that I've said before have got too much stuff in one part of the track and it's all kind of fighting for space. This feels like you've got stuff that's pretty well distributed throughout the track. It's just like not really that well volume balanced to get the most out of the elements. So that's like pretty much ideal scenario, because there's not much to do except for get the mix right. And that's like something that can be done. Mr. Downpour. Quick plug. Downpour and I have a collaboration coming out on Deep Palma at the end of this month called Connected. I think it's called Connected. Yeah, more on that later. Not later today, but later in the month. This stab that you've got in there, it's cool sound. I think it could use a bit more reverb on it, or it almost sounds like it doesn't have any. It's very dry. And then some of the rest of the elements have kind of got a, I would say, normal amount of reverb and delay and stuff on them. So this one just kind of, it's an element that I would normally put a bit of reverb on, and I think it could probably benefit from that. you could kind of start bringing those chords in, the chords that happen on the one here. Kind of bring that in, maybe filter it down and start bringing it in here. So it would just happen like 1, 2, instead of 3, 4, instead of like 1, 2. And then maybe the string as well, and just kind of lead into this bit a bit more. Maybe a new hi-hat or something here could help to lift it a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a solid track. I think it could use, like I said, a couple of little tweaks here and there. And it kind of feels a little bit like not as polished as some of your other stuff. Maybe you haven't done a kind of final mix down or something. Because normally your stuff that you send in sounds like ready to release. And this one sounds like it could be like kind of polished a bit more in the mix and stuff. And then, like I said, there's just a few bits where I think the energy could flow better. There's some bits where it kind of is a little bit boring, and then quite a lot happens, and then, you know, so I think you just kind of want that curve of energy to flow a bit more gently, especially for the track. That it's quite a gentle track, right? But yeah, always solid stuff from Downpour. So I'm kind of, it's not exactly, but it's kind of like feels, I don't know, like it's kind of like you're trying to do something similar to stuff that I do, maybe deep, kind of somewhere in this kind of deep house progressive kind of range. It's got a really cool vibe. There's a couple of like issues that are making it feel, I don't know, a little bit like not quite executed as well as it could be. One, the kick is really long. Normally for a track that's like more kind of progressive or deep house, the kick would probably look a bit more, is it? Yeah, I think you probably just want to change the kick out, but so that you can kind of understand what to look for, you probably want it to look a bit more like, so that's your hi-hat here, right? You probably want it to look a bit more like that. You know, maybe a little bit longer. A little bit less sausagey, probably less kind of thumpy on the attack, so probably with less. Yeah, I think you just want to change the kick out, to be honest. You could try sampling a kick from another track that is in the same key as the one you're working on and in a similar genre or similar style. And then the bass. So these are two kind of very fundamental aspects. But the bass you've got here, so it's got quite a bit of mid-range in it, which makes it kind of sound quite aggressive, but it also makes it stand out in the mix. And because it's so audible, you can really hear that it's not changing the whole time, right? It's just there. It's sounding exactly the same, taking up a lot of space and taking up a lot of attention, I would say. So if I use bass lines like that don't move a lot, that are quite simple a lot of the time, but I use them as like a foundational element of the track, not really like in the as like a lead of the track or a hook. So basically you just want to pull the cutoff in so that it's a bit more subby, a bit less audible, a bit less aggressive. It's going to also create a bit more separation from some of the other elements as well, which you bring in later. And then in some of what you could then do if you bring the cutoff down in some of these sections here. So let me just try this here, since the bass is so audible there. You know, if it's something like that, but you probably want to do it with a combination of the cutoff and tweaking the envelope amount. But then in a section like this, you can then open that cutoff. I think that's going to probably, if I'm correct in seeing the vision of what you're trying to do here, that's probably going to get you a lot, those two things are probably going to get you a lot closer to where you're trying to get to. I mean, I'd go for that. See how you get on with those two things. The hats and stuff, really cool. Ah, that's right. One other thing I was thinking about the hats. It's the same the whole way through. So, like with any element, you want to have some kind of movement. and the, you know, to have the hats in. So at the start, it feels like there's a bit, maybe too much. And then nothing more kind of happens to progress it that is that obvious anyway. So I think strip it back a little bit at the start and then build up to that. You don't have to have like too much new stuff, but then you could also have like a section where I often do a section like before the break or something where I'll take out a lot of the hats or something, kind of strip it back, maybe bring in like a high pad or a synth or something, a vocal, something to kind of take the attention, and then it gives you the opportunity to bring those hats back and create a lot more energy with them. And just shifting it up, having some different sections like that, means you don't have to add new things all the time, but you're still creating the effect of adding new stuff. Arguably better when you bring something back that was already there. It has maybe a more of a wow factor, kind of, because people are used to it, and yeah.
There are animals. There are animals made out of clouds. You're still in my dreams, still dancing through the scene, the goddess of the night. But I rather believe in light. I'm in love again, 'cause I'm on the road.
So you've got this string in there, which is like very heavily side chained. It's not got any movement on it. And it kind of feels, I feel like having something that was down an octave, or maybe like, maybe like playing the seventh, playing with the seventh as well, a bit less side chain, maybe filter out the top of it a bit, put some chorus on it, just kind of, so it's not so, yeah, it's kind of, it's really not gelling with the rest of the stuff. The thing is, like, everything else that you've got going on there sounds really solid, so it's kind of, you know, you've got these little percussion fills and edits and stuff, and it sounds really cool. You've got this nice vocal. I think you could also like filter out a bit more of your kick so that it creates a bit more impact when it does come in.
But I rather believe in light. I'm in love again, 'cause I'm on the road.
I'm not sure if the track has a bass line, but I would say you want to bring in your bass line there for sure.
The goddess of the night. 'Cause I'm on the road.
Yeah, so the arrangement is definitely not working. If you're going to do an intro, like a kind of 1 minute intro, kind of build up like this before you've brought in the kick, you want to start the track here as like that is the intro, and then that's like where it drops. So this part here should basically be here. And I would argue that you probably want to even have a bit more in, like maybe a open hat or something like that, an open shaker, something to give it more energy in the highs.
On an airplane in the morning sky, I'm breathing bubbles.
I mean, this is a cool synth as well that you've brought in here. Works, fits well with the track. But again, like, there's not that much happening in this section, and then you slowly bring in the synth here in time for the outro. So the track, I think, overall could be, judging by the number of elements that are in there and stuff, I think it could be cut down to at least 6 minutes, if not closer to 5. Just try and reference some other tracks and see how, how long people are waiting before they bring in other elements. I think there's a couple of small elements that you could add, like I said, open hat, open shaker, just to lift it up a bit. But you've got really cool elements, really cool drums and percussion that work well. I think it's just kind of implementing it into the arrangement a bit better. Okay, so that, I like that where it drops there, but this 1 minute section before there, it's like there's not really much happening to lead to that. Like, it's pretty much all the same up until here. And then you bring in this kind of pad sweep thing. So I think you just kind of want to work that intro a little bit, create a little bit more interest. Like, I always say that intros are not the most important thing, but they still need to be functional and work, and you want to kind of ideally have them still be kind of interesting, right? So you don't need more elements necessarily to do that. It's just having some kind of change and some movement. This is sick. I really like this. A really nice kind of contrast. Totally unexpected vocal, I would say, for the track, which is like a nice surprise, but it works really well. It's implemented really well. Like, it's a simple groove, but it feels like you've probably made the groove to the vocal. If not, then you're very lucky to find it. But it's just, yeah, it works really well. really nice new synths that you put in there. The break felt a bit like drawn out and kind of boring, like especially this bit here. This synth that you've brought in here, it's interesting, but it feels, it's really reminding me of something. Like, it's got this kind of like nostalgic, kind of like, I don't know, like some kind of old decade, like movie kind of soundtrack, like 80s or 70s or something. Kind of, it's a bit epic, but in a kind of like cheesy and outdated sounding way. But it's also, I don't feel like it's doing enough heavy lifting to be just the sole focus here right now, and you don't really like bring it forward in a bold way either. I mean, maybe it could be done to work like this. You start having something here, and then the vocal with the kind of filtered kick drum works. Maybe it's like a disco-ish kind of melody. Yeah, so the outro, not great. Intro, not great. The solid groove and phenomenal vocal. I think you've got like yeah, the end result could be like incredible. Like I can kind of I can imagine it, say like And Me or Adam Port or someone playing it, if it was kind of like produced to that standard, and it being like the track of the night that people are like shazamming, and it's going nuts on Instagram and stuff. So maybe that's a lot of pressure, but yeah, congrats. It's a great start to something. Okay, so this is like, it's got a cool groove, but I think it's like, it's missing a hook, you know? So the like the human voice sits around here, and we as humans, like, it's the most pleasing sounds for us and the most engaging. Our brains are biologically tuned to listen to this part of the frequency spectrum here, because that's where the human voice sits, and that's the most important sound to us, right? Also, things that are going to kind of create danger and whatnot, generally, you know, like some wild animal sits around here, you know. So if you just isolate your track like this with an EQ and listen to what's going on in there, you can kind of tell, does it have like something memorable that someone can hum along to, that someone's going to try and remember when they heard it in the club? They're going to remember it the next day and go like, oh, what was that track that went da 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 da? So let's try it. So you've got some sounds there, but it's pretty generic what's there, right? So that's what I mean. It's kind of missing a hook, whether it's like a vocal or some more kind of standout melody or something like that. Or it could be sound design, but something unique, you know, something, you can create something that's really strong and engaging in this area by just having two pretty simple sounds, playing pretty simple patterns that are kind of interacting together in some interesting way. Or also having, you know, you can have a simple rhythmic melody playing on the same note, but then doing an octave jump or something like that, that then just makes it engaging, makes it kind of memorable. At the moment, this doesn't really feel like it has anything specifically memorable about it. Yeah. So it's like it's like a solid kind of foundation of a track. I would suggest, honestly, just probably moving on. I find from my experience, having a track that's like this and then trying to find a hook is just ends up in frustration. My advice to anyone, and this is what I do always now, I used to do it in the reverse, but I always start with the hook. So I find it the hardest part of writing a track. I find it the hardest part of writing a good track. So I do it first. And when you have a good hook, whether it's like a melody, a vocal, whatever, it could be like a percussion riff, or it can be anything, literally. But when you have that and you build a track around emphasizing that, and it's so much easier, the results are just so much more engaging and so much more powerful. So I recommend to everyone, try building your tracks around a hook rather than building a groove and trying to find a hook to fit with that groove. think the kick's not right for this track from what I'm hearing so far. Bass is a bit loud as well, and I think the sound could be a bit more interesting and unique. That it's playing the same melody as that synth, right? And we can see where that synth is happening. Right, so that your bass can like kind of come up and meet that in the harmonics, but it's, where is it? Is that your bass or your kick? That's your, yeah, I think your bass, I think it's just a matter of choosing a sound that matches better, basically. So new sounds for the kick and bass. Anthony Gregerson has retracted his comment, but I think what he said was that the bongo sample was from an 80s track. It's bloody cool anyway. So this here is, I think, maybe one step closer than like what I was saying about the previous track. You've got something that's a bit more engaging with this melody, and you're creating movement with it, where you're bringing in the cutoff, you're opening the cutoff and stuff, and that's great. I think you can generally get a lot more mileage out of having a couple of elements working together. So something that plays off this is just going to give it this whole other dimension, right? So even if it's going this and then having just like one other synth that's playing in a different part of the frequency spectrum, going like afterwards or something like that, or a percussion thing like a clave going just something interacting with it. Doesn't have to happen every time. In fact, it's better if it doesn't happen every time, if it's happening on like a different frequency, different like loop. So this is happening every bar, and then the other one that answers it, maybe having that happen every 2 bars or something. And then if you can add in a third element that happens every 4 bars, then you're onto something that's like really engaging to listen to. All right. I mean, it's cool. You've got some good elements there. Change out that kick, new bass sound. Get in some new elements that are, again, like the same kind of thing as I said to Ryan about market, or when I was talking about creating leads. Just a couple of simple bits that play with the main thing you've got there, and that's just going to give that main thing so much more power and so much more longevity for the listener. So we're basically at time and at the end of the tracks, but I'm feeling generous, so we'll do a couple more from the wait list. Maybe I'll do another poll in Patreon and see if people are still liking this format where we go a bit more in depth on each track but review less tracks. Now, I've got an issue. This is completely unrelated to that. I've got an issue where my video editor is on vacation. Good for him. But I was not organized enough to get new videos filmed for him to edit before he went away. So I've got an issue, and I've come up with this idea that what I'm going to probably do for next weekend is have people submit a kind of a demo. So I'll post this in the next couple of days, but like submit a demo, and then I'm going to kind of select one to work on, maybe or maybe not as like a collaboration, but we'll do it as a live stream next week. So basically just a kind of like live production type thing, and it will give you guys an opportunity to submit something, and you know, you can kind of see how I would actually go about implementing some of this type of advice that I'm suggesting here. It will be, yeah, I mean, just to make it worthwhile, it's just going to be probably one track, but I'll post about that in Patreon hopefully later tonight or tomorrow. Yeah, hopefully that's interesting to some of you, and if it's really good, then, you know, we can release it as a collaboration or whatever. Turk, maybe you can submit your bongo track. I don't know, let's see. And in the future I'll try and be a bit more organized with my a bit more prepared. All right, new house mixdown. That's fast. Excuse me. I wanted it to drop there. Like, it kind of felt like it had done its thing and it was ready. And then it felt a little bit like, I felt a little bit disappointed when it didn't.
What? This is what you call a bad bitch. Hey, this is what you call a bad bitch. What? This is what you call a bad bitch.
So yeah, you built more anticipation before this bit where it didn't drop than you did before the actual drop. You're probably going to need a bass line. Maybe you've got one here? Yeah, that's a bit late in the piece to be 2 minutes is like, especially when you've done all of this stuff, to be introducing a bass line at 2 minutes, I think it's just not working. And now you've got this like kind of 90s house sounding a cappella here. Which personally I like way more than the kind of, I don't know, what do you call it? Like, it sounds like Cardi B or something like that. Or maybe a splice vocal, the bad bitch thing. I think the other one has a lot more kind of, I don't know, it's cooler to me. But the two are just like different worlds. So it kind of, it makes, in my opinion, when you do that, unless it's done in like a really, really awesome way, and the track needs to be like top of the kind of food chain, you know, like a chart topping kind of track that, for it to work, you know, so all the production needs to be on point, the melody writing, the hooks and everything needs to be like super on point. When it's not that, and you bring in like, and you've got these kind of disconnected vocals, it just, to me, makes it sound amateur and kind of detracts from the track. Now you've got these two vocals playing on top of each other, and then this kind of like, this is a really cool and interesting sound, this like, this kind of like bassline build up thing that you've got, but it's like ruining the low end, so you kind of want to use it only in like a break, like build up kind of thing. And then when you're getting to this drop, whereas, okay, so it drops here, right? So in this bit here, you want to get this. It's going to be too much, isn't it? You know, you want there to be an impact when the drop actually gets there. So maybe even more with a bit of a curve. And then get that thing out of there. So I think you've got some cool elements. There's some pretty unique elements in there. Yeah, but it seems a little bit all over the place, and like the arrangement is not that functional without having a bass line to the middle, almost the middle of the track. But there's definitely some cool like sound design and some cool vibes in there for sure. Ollie Balin, Tender Love. It kind of feels like there's something missing in the frequency spectrum, like. Yeah, like I think there's a little bit of kind of upper mids where it's a little bit, that kind of feels a little bit unbalanced. I think the track in general was like really solid, nice kind of deep groover. It's got a very cool vibe. Maybe it's just a matter of turning the clap up, or making the clap, maybe layering it with a snare or something like that, just giving it a bit more oomph in this kind of around like 1 to 2K kind of area. Failing that, kind of maybe adding something in there like a synth or something, or I mean, you've got some of those like little vocal bits which kind of sound like they want to be there, but they're not quite there. Yeah, I think that the thing, it's kind of been a reoccurring theme. Like, I mean, I guess it always is. When there's like gaps in the frequency spectrum, the track kind of feels unbalanced. Like the ideal track, I mean, obviously you want the elements and everything to be engaging, but from a production standpoint, the ideal track has like less elements distributed more evenly throughout the frequency spectrum, and then you get this kind of ideal scenario of a track sounding full but open, so you can kind of hear everything, but it's the whole track as a composition sounds like it's filling up, it's full frequency, right? So I don't know, it took me a long time to kind of understand that myself, but if you can kind of try to keep that in mind when you're writing stuff, you know, this is a small, you know, maybe it's a mixing thing, maybe it's a little bit of a writing thing, but just in general, that's how I try to think about elements that I'm trying to add to my track. You know, it's kind of, you don't want to be too analytical about this stuff because it can take away creativity and whatever, and that's always more important. But think about hooks and filling up the frequency spectrum, and then that's like you're gonna get music that's much, and like filling up the frequency spectrum but giving elements space, so prioritizing what's going to sit where, and that just makes your whole life easier. It's not necessarily easy to execute, but it means your mixing is going to be easier, and your track's going to sound more full and more professional often, because the elements are going to complement each other rather than fight with each other. All right, so that's going to be a wrap for today. As I said, we're going to do something a bit different next weekend because I'm a loser and I didn't sort my shit out in time to get my videos edited. Bad me, but we're going to do something cool anyway. So everyone enjoy your Sunday, and we will see you next weekend. Peace.